I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Molso, could you read our mission statement?
Mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. Our next item is approval of the agenda. I'll need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Bill Molso and seconded by Sarah Runcie. I will call for the vote. Forgot to ask if there's any discussions or changes. If not, you can vote now. It is approved. Next item is the public forum. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak, just to remind everyone that a public school meeting is a meeting held in public, not with the public. So we are sure willing to listen, but keep your comments to 3 minutes and we won't answer or ask any questions. So just state your name, Trudy.
Trudy Medetsky. Okay, well, the reason I'm here is a few months ago, a mother called me who had also been here as a substitute teacher. And the reason she called is she was surprised, she said, and shocked to see that the rainbow flag or the LGBTQ flag was in a display case. And it was her understanding, as well as mine, that the flag had been removed. If the club is willing to think about showing their support for what they believe with an individual kind of pin, that might be better toward
That's 3 minutes.
expressing
Trudy.
freedom of religion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trudy. Moving on, our next item is our technology update. Welcome, you technology smart people.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about technology use in our district. My name is Todd Pickthorn, and I'm the District Technology Coordinator. I would like to start by introducing one of our high school innovators who uses technology to engage students' creativity, Mr. Alex Kleppe.
We should clap or something with that introduction. Are you okay if I just give these to you to hold and
Sure.
It's not a courtroom, so.
Or to keep. Just wheel it down here. Right.
Thanks, Todd, for introducing me. My name is Mr. Alex Kleppe. I am a math teacher at the high school as well as a CAD pre-engineering and engineering teacher. One of the things that Todd asked me to present on is kind of the use of 3D printing at the high school. So in those CAD pre-engineering and engineering classes, we use a program called AutoCAD. It's a 3D modeling program. So at the CAD level and the pre-engineering level, we really focus on the basics of the program itself and how to create 3D models. And one of the objects you have up there, the puzzle cube, we actually print that in pre-engineering. The students design that on their own. The only parameters that I give them is 4 to 6 pieces, trying to keep it even amongst the class. And then they have to design how the puzzle cube will go together. I give them kind of the size to aim for. So that is actually a student that created that last quarter. He left it in the classroom, so I thought I'd bring it today, and I'll bring it back. And if he wants it, he can surely have it. They get to keep the cubes themselves. They take them home. It's their kind of keepsake from the class. So that's the pre-engineering. When we get into engineering, we go a little bit more in depth with the use of the 3D printer and kind of the technology behind the AutoCAD. And we end up printing something similar to a CO2 car. I brought a CO2 truck. This one's a few years old, but it was left to me by a student who, once upon graduation, didn't have any need for it anymore as he was going into military and he didn't want to lose it, so he left it with me to showcase to other students. As you look at it, you'll notice on the back side there's an orange piece that's added in there. That was printed secondary. as we raced the CO2 cars, so when it was printed, I looked at it and showed the student, the CO2 cartridge isn't going to fit safely in here, so we can't actually race this because this is going to cause some issues. So he designed a plug to fit in the back based off of his original design that we could put in there, and then we were able to race the CO2 truck safely, which is kind of always one of the keys. This is just a couple examples of some of the things that we do. We've always kind of printed, whether it was the wheels for the CO2 cars or the full CO2 car there or the puzzle cube as we kind of design. So I did have a short video. I don't know if it's able to go or not. Were you able to get that ready? I'm sorry. The video that I sent you? No. If not, it's not the end of the world. This video that will be shown, if we can find it, was actually a collaboration amongst the video productions teacher and myself to get this ready. So this was used by some students to film some stuff, and then we actually filmed Iron Man helmet being printed, which was designed by the student themselves as well. So if it works, this will be awesome. And I will note, as it's printing, we sped it up quite a bit because it would take about, I think that one took 2 to 3 hours to print on its own, so they sped up the imagery of it there. This is one of 2 printers we have at the high school. This is the MakerBot version, which we still use periodically, but not as much as the other version. We got a newer one 5 years ago now or so, called the Afina. Yeah, that's just the printer making sounds. It's one of the reasons why I use the Afina a little bit more frequently than the MakerBot. The MakerBot tends to distract some students at times with the sounds that it'll make, but the Afina is more of a closed versus an open area, which keeps the temperature more consistent, which allows for a better print of the objects we have found.
Does
So,
it just start out with a block of plastic, or how does it?
well,
what's
actually, it
look-
starts out with nothing, and it comes in a ream, kind of a circular ream, and it just, I think of it as a very smart hot glue gun. It heats it up
Okay.
and then just lays it in layers, and it dries pretty quickly and hardens. As you can tell, there's some good consistency with those pieces. And I can actually, on my end, when I go to print it, determine how much fill is in there to determine how strong it's actually going to be structurally for the student. So yeah. And there's her little mini Iron Man helmet.
This is all in pre-engineering.
This was an engineering class where we printed that one. It was one of their final projects that they made, was the Iron Man helmet. Any other questions? If not, that's my part. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm going to take those back with me, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh,
Dion broke
Can
out.
nobody get it?
We're thinking there's pieces missing.
No, that's why I had it brought together.
I'm just going to talk through a couple slides here. So I put together this slide with like day-to-day operations by the numbers, I called it. So in our IT department, we create and manage over 2,600 student accounts and over 550 plus employees. We manage software on those devices for all students and staff. In the last month, there was over 600 applications/resources that were accessed. Our department closed over 2,075 help desk tickets in the last year, which is a pretty significant number. And on any given school day, we have over 4,600 internet-connected devices connected to the network. So that's a lot of devices. So big number. One thing I wanted to talk more about is cybersecurity. That's a top concern. K-12 education is a target for cybercrime, and I think this is where our department spends a lot of time. Cybersecurity is like an onion. It has lots of layers, and you can do a lot of different things with those layers. when dealing with cybersecurity, it's important for IT to focus on preventative steps, but recognize that cybersecurity shouldn't be just a IT concern. This is everybody's problem. It's a problem that affects everything now. When you think of a large building, any organization, HVAC's connected to the network, the security is connected to the network. Everything is tied into the network nowadays. So it's everybody's concern and that it stays functional. But some of the things that we do on the IT side is number one, we implemented multi-factor authentication for all of our staff accounts. And what I mean by that is that when you're trying to log into your account, not only do you need to know a username and a password, but you need to also get a message confirming it, just like you do with a bank account or a credit card account nowadays where that happens. We've enhanced that a little bit in the school environment in that if you're on one of our devices that are managed by our network or within our buildings, it doesn't prompt you for MFA. But if you're off-site at home trying to access your account on a personal device, it would prompt you for this. So we've added those provisional steps to our multi-factor so that it is easier for people to work with and makes it less inconvenient. I know we also recently implemented MFA for our student information system, Infinite Campus, and that I would say rolled out fairly smoothly. It was actually easier for people to click on the button to sign in automatically than to have to put in their username and password all the time. So we're constantly trying to find ways to tighten that security with multi-factor authentication. Another step that we take is kind of knowing what you have and knowing what's available out there. We have a Microsoft program that kind of analyzes all the devices and says, these are the applications that are installed, these are the versions of those applications. And that tool helps to make us aware of when there's updates available for different applications so that we can roll out and patch those. And Microsoft scores those vulnerabilities that it finds so that we know which ones to take care of first, kind of attack it that way. Another thing that we did was last summer we collected all the student devices and rolled out the latest version of Windows 11. With that, we run a few advanced tools that allow us to only allow certain applications that we've pre-provisioned on those devices to run. So they can't get malware like a typical computer would because we use these advanced tools, Windows Defender Application Control it's called, and app locker policies that only allow the applications that we say can run on those devices run. And so that we kind of have more of a managed environment that way. That keeps us safe and keeps us running smoothly from day to day, so that's good. Recently, we've also partnered with Southwest West Central and an organization called CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. CISA is a program, a federal program, that is made available to K-12 schools that is got a bunch of free services to us, where they'll scan our network externally and tell us of any vulnerabilities that we have on our network. So I know I just started working with them on that, and I think that's a great tool. I'd rather have somebody we know and trust scan the network and tell us what's wrong rather than the bad guys doing that. So that's good. The next slide I want to talk about is our annual technology survey. This year we switched back to the format that we previously had used, where it uses the CASE framework for analyzing data. The CASE framework is divided into 4 different score areas: classroom, access, skills, and environment. And for us, the access and skills are 2 areas that we kind of are considered advanced or exemplary in. Looking at this slide, you can see that the very bottom number was our pre-COVID number. 1091 was our score. And our latest score that we took this year was 1095, which is an improvement. And this is a good number, I feel, when you compare this to the state average of all the schools that use this tool of 1065 and the national average of 1079. And it's this tool called Bright Bytes that does technology surveys for school districts. I tried to reach out to them and get a quantity of districts that in Minnesota are using this tool or nationwide that are using this tool, and they were not able to provide that in time for me. So I apologize for that. But I know that, in talking with them, our numbers are good. And, I think to your credit, access is one area that I feel that we excel in. And, all students have devices. They're all made available to them. And I feel that really helps them in their education. So this time I'll turn it over to Karen.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me this afternoon. My name is Karen Lundgren. I'm the digital learning coach for the district. And tonight I'm going to present some information to you on artificial intelligence and more specifically ChatGPT. In the past 2 to 3 months, you've probably seen news reports on this artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. It's a resource that is infiltrating our educational environment at a very rapid pace. So there's new apps that are coming out on a daily basis. And so during a February virtual PD day, I had the opportunity to do an hour-long session with each our middle school and our high school staff, just introducing them to artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and what it is and kind of what we can expect here a little bit moving forward. It's a very rapid-moving technology, so staying on top of it is going to be a challenge. But the main thing is we want to keep our teachers informed and educated on what this is and help them navigate this in the classroom. So what is ChatGPT or OpenAI? Artificial intelligence, or more specifically ChatGPT, ChatGPT was created by the company called OpenAI, and it's only been out since November 30th of 2022. So it has not been around very long. ChatGPT, which the GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's a highly advanced artificial chatbot that can simulate human writing and human communications. It's made huge waves since its initial release in November. AI essentially is a simulation of human intelligence that's processed by machines or by computers. We're asking these machines to think and act like humans. And the information that these machines are getting to provide us this output is getting put in by humans. So they're constantly getting trained, more and more information all the time. And the output that they produce is very, very lifelike. AI also has the ability to do image recognition tools. By providing it a prompt, asking it to produce a specific type image, it will produce you that type of image. However, the question becomes, is artificial intelligence plagiarism? Is it cheating? What is it? To describe plagiarism, that's the act of using someone else's words or ideas and passing them off as your own. And it has a human component to it. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is not intellectual property, and it doesn't have that human component. So, how do we define this? The more people use these artificial intelligence tools, the smarter they will continue to get. However, the information that is provided to artificial intelligence if the programming is faulty, the output will be just as faulty. And I'll explain that more as we go along. However, artificial intelligence may be one of the most significant disruptive technologies of our time. In the words of Saul Khan from Khan Academy, which is an educational resource that many of our teachers use, he says, "It is a new epic, and it is the most epic of epics, I really believe, and I would not have said that 6 months or a year ago." So just when we thought ChatGPT had hit its peak over the last few months, OpenAI, again the creator of ChatGPT version 3, released version 4 on March 14th. The image on the left, it shows ChatGPT and the amount of information that it was trained on, and then ChatGPT, the amount of information that was trained on. So you can see it significantly increased the amount of information that it's being trained on. ChatGPT at this time is a paid version of ChatGPT. GPT-3, however, is a free version. And there are many other versions of chat resources out there. Tonight I'm talking more about a couple more specific ones, ChatGPT being one of those. ChatGPT is very skilled, and it can hold a conversation with you. So when initially released in November of 2022, ChatGPT took just 5 days to reach 1 million users. And you can see that, kind of see that on that middle graphic there. It's at the very bottom. And that's in comparison to, for example, Netflix on the top took 4 years and 11 months to reach that many users. So ChatGPT, 5 days. The graphic on the right is just a splash screen that you see when you go into and open a ChatGPT account, and it gives you some examples, some capabilities, and some limitations of the program. So where are we seeing artificial intelligence in our lives right now? Do any of you have like an Alexa device or a Google Home device? Those are certainly forms of artificial intelligence. Facial recognition on your phones, maps, navigation on your phones. Those are all forms of artificial intelligence that we probably use every day, but just didn't even think of it in that context. So a little bit more about ChatGPT. Initially, when it was released in November, its privacy policy and its terms of use said only the users had to be 18 years of age or older to use it. Well, as of March 1st, they changed their terms of use saying, well, 13 to 18-year-old people can use this, students can use this with parent permission. Therefore, Todd and I had the discussion, and we decided in our environment, because it wasn't intended for those users under 18 years of age, that we do currently block it on our network for our student devices. Our staff do have access to it, and that is part of that is getting them trained, getting them comfortable. What can and can't they do with these tools? So is that going to stop our students from using it? Probably not, but we are taking the steps that we can in our environment to try and mitigate that.
We currently block it to our students, you said?
Yes.
Can they access it from home?
On their device?
Not the school
Not on their
device.
device.
Their home device. From their home device.
From their cell phones.
On their cell phone?
So yeah, they could certainly be sitting in class on their cell phone using a chat bot of some sort, but they can't access it on their school device.
Thank you.
We can't control what they do on their phones. We certainly can have some control over their student devices, school-issued devices. So until we learn more, and in blocking this for students, this also gives us time to learn more about this resource. and to help prepare our teachers to teach with it, because it's here. It's not going to go anywhere. Kind of like when the calculator came in to the math department, or even when we brought in one-to-one technology in the classrooms, the teachers were like, how am I ever going to use this in my classroom? And I go to any of them today and they would not give them up. So again, it's a matter of helping them navigate this new territory. I've been trying to work with the resource myself just to see what some of the capabilities are. I asked it for my February session that I did with staff to write me a brief session description on the impact of AI on education, and it output a nice little paragraph for me that was very usable. I gave it a very basic command when I asked that. I asked it to provide me a summary of the TV show Friends. Again, a nice little paragraph, just an overview of the show. But then I asked it a follow-up question and say, okay, so now can you describe each of the characters in that show for me? And then it provided me more detail in asking that. I asked it for a recipe for how do I make beef stew, detailed in all your ingredients that you need to create that recipe. A colleague of mine kind of did that in reverse, said, okay, I have these ingredients on hand. What can I make with these ingredients? And it spit out a recipe for him to make with what he had on hand. Couple situations in conversations with teachers, they're like, I just don't see how I would use this or how my students would use this. And this was like in a shop environment. And so I went on and I gave it the command. I said, please provide me a supply list and detailed instructions on how to build a 4x4 doghouse. And within a minute, I had the instructions and the entire supply list. So I could have gone to Menards, got my supplies, came home and had my step-by-step directions to do that. I also asked it to write me a letter of recommendation for an FFA student. And putting that FFA student in there, put certain criteria in that letter that referenced things that an FFA student would experience, without giving it very much detail at all, actually. I asked it to write a lesson plan on the American Revolution for me. Within a minute, I had a very detailed lesson plan, learning points. It's amazing what it can do. And then while I was doing the high school presentation, the question came up, so do we need a policy or something on this, on how we're going to handle this in the school environment? So one of the teachers went on ChatGPT during my presentation and asked it to create a policy on how AI would be addressed in the classroom at Marshall High School. So gave us a nice little policy. Now, are they perfect? No, they aren't. But there's certainly a very good starting point where you're not starting from scratch. You can take the output from there and add your details to it and personalize it. Just a very, very powerful tool. Again, the output that you get from these resources is only as good as the input that you put into them. And your questions, the first question, like I said with the show Friends, just asked a very generic question, but then I asked it to describe the characters so you can continue to build on what you initially asked and get more detail. Our search engines of the future are going to have this built in. And actually, that's right around the corner. I got the opportunity to get in on the testing version of Microsoft Bing. Has artificial intelligence built into it, and actually that's based off this ChatGPT, as well as Google has an artificial intelligence built in called Bard. And I actually just got in on that one on Friday. So on Friday afternoon, I took one command and I gave it to ChatGPT, I gave it to Microsoft's Bing, I gave it to Google's Bard, and then there's one other chat that I use. It's called UChat. Gave it the exact same command, 4 completely different outputs, and now it's time for me to sit down and just analyze those results and see who's doing the best job. can I use a little from each, or, how is that going to look? So there are AI detectors that are on the market, artificial intelligence detectors. I know that some of our high school language arts teachers have looked at those. They are not, however, 100%, but they may potentially be a tool that those teachers could use to help in this. At the high school, we do purchase a plagiarism checker called Turnitin, used primarily by our high school language department. And I just got an email, I think it was over the weekend, that Turnitin, as of tomorrow, will have an artificial intelligence detector built into it. So it will automatically detect anything that's submitted through Turnitin. So, as I said, it was a bit of a challenge to try and prepare some of this information because I was updating my notes yet at 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's so rapidly moving. So what are we going to see for the educational impacts on this, and what kind of uses are we going to see? How are they going to disrupt our educational environment? How might we use these resources to help our students learn or to help our teachers develop content? ChatGPT can write any of the following of these within minutes. Any command I've given it, a minute or less, I've had the output from it. So essays, poems, syllabus, course descriptions. It can provide directions and step-by-step for a learning activity. Like I said, the Woods project that I asked it to create. It can solve math and science problems. I've even read where it can do a virtual science lab. It can design a test or a quiz for a teacher on a topic. Just plug in a topic and say, design me a test or quiz, 10-question test or quiz on this topic. It's just, those are some of the things that they can do with it. However, there are challenges. The content created for ChatGPT was based on information that was the year 2021 or earlier. So we're already looking at 2-year-old information. Now, ChatGPT, I haven't heard in comparison the information that's in there, but I only anticipate that it's going to become more and more current all the time. It can very easily generate misleading, false, offensive, or biased content. So we have to be cognizant of that. In most cases, it does not produce any citations or references to credible resources. However, with my experiment with the Microsoft Bing built in, it was providing me some resources to where it got its information, for example, like from CNN.com. So that is the only one that I've seen that has done that. It's difficult to detect. It's so human-like. I can tell it to write a story. We were talking just, as a couple of you came in, we can tell it to write something at a 3rd grade level. We can ask it at a 6th grade level, a junior and high school level. That's all the same content at different levels, and we're going to get completely different outputs, and it's going to level it to that student level. The content can be unsafe or not trustworthy. And it does collect a massive amount of information from its users. So every prompt I have put into ChatGPT and every output, it retains that history of everything that I am putting in there. So again, more generic information. I was showing Todd something earlier today on how it could help teachers write IEPs. Well, that can be some very sensitive information that you're working with. But if you ask it to write a goal for a 4th grade student who can only read at 21 words per minute, was the example I saw. So you're not using any personal information in it, but yet can certainly get some potential usable results from that. And what can teachers do? Kevin Roos, who hosts a podcast that makes sense of the rapidly changing world of technology, argues that educators shouldn't ban ChatGPT, but should leverage it for instruction. Banning and blocking AI is a temporary solution. He also writes, after talking with dozens of educators over the past few weeks, I've come around to the view that banning ChatGPT from the classroom is the wrong move. Instead, I believe schools should thoughtfully embrace it as a teaching aid, one that could unlock student creativity, offer personalized tutoring, and better prepare students to work along AI systems as adults. So that's where we try and find that balance and help our teachers to navigate this. Some things that we can look at having our teachers do is basically use it as a personal assistant or a teaching assistant. It can help them write lesson plans. It can create rubrics. It can grade from a rubric. It can assess assignments. It will create professional correspondence. Teachers get asked all the time to write letters of recommendations for students. This would be a very good tool to help them with that. We are going to have to look at maybe redesigning assignments to include a critical thinking or higher order thinking or learning activities, lessons that can't be replicated by artificial intelligence. But we also need to be transparent with them about assignments and why they do need to learn how to write and to do research. Again, an educational tool for teachers. I've seen examples where teachers have had ChatGPT write the prompts and then give that prompt to the student and have them compare it to a credible source and do contrast and compare. We need to look at potentially creating assignments that foster personal engagement. It has a more personal connotation to it. And focusing on the writing process, not necessarily the end result. We may be seeing some teachers who, hey, I'm going back to paper pencil, to try and avoid this. But we also need to talk to students about academic integrity. What's acceptable? What is not acceptable? And the final question I think we need to ask ourselves is, are we preparing students for their future? Questions?
When you get something back from them, is it editable? Is it in a format that you can, or would the kids have to retype it to change anything, or?
I copied and pasted everything into Word that I did when I started running my comparisons. Yep, easily copy and paste into a word processing document.
We do have work sessions scheduled for after this. We'll get a chance to play a little bit in the work session this afternoon, too.
Yep, I can certainly answer more questions then.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Our next item is the consent agenda. I will need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Sarah Ranchi and seconded by Bill Moso. I will call for the vote. Consent agenda is approved. Board reports or updates? Any updates from anyone?
On the consent agenda, there was the Community Services Advisory Board recommendation for board members. I had interviewed the 5 candidates that are named, and they will be great for that advisory board, and I'll be attending my first meeting to replace Matt on Wednesday.
Very good. Anybody else? Next item, discussion items. First review of policy 601 to 605. Were there any questions? Moving on, second review of policy 533. Anything from anybody? Okay. Action items, approval of the 23-24 school calendar. I'll make a motion.
Second.
Share that the calendar committee has met and reviewed these draft calendars, one for next year and for the following year. And then they've had a chance to review kind of the suggestions and stuff in the meeting. We had a good discussion around next year's. Next year's, everything kind of falls in a way that looks pretty straightforward. Following year gets a little interesting with where the start of the school year falls and where the holidays fall and such for breaks. But
I heard we're not having any snow days next
no
year.
snow days next year. That's our plan. Yeah. We're going to call the weatherman, but
I'll call for the vote. Is approved. Next action item is approval to utilize metal detectors in the schools. I will need a motion.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Motion made by Bill Moso and seconded by Bill Swope. Any discussion?
just want to share with this one to clarify any confusion or questions there might be. We're not looking to add metal detectors at the front doors or anything like that. That's this is simply
Kind of a wand.
It's a wand. Yeah, we're looking to add a wand at the middle school, the high school, and Maytech. So if a principal is doing a search and they have reasonable suspicion they're already looking for something, a vape, for example, tends to be something we see a lot of. This would be an additional way to search without touching a student or something like that. So it'd be a wand used only in very specific instances when there's reason to believe there's something to look for, and parents would be notified and such. Just lays out some protocols and process we're consistent across the district. But that's what we're looking to do.
Very good. I'll call for the vote. And that is approved. Our next action item is approval of a meeting on May 1st to visit the CTI building following our regular meeting. I'll make a motion.
Second?
Motion by myself and seconded by Sarah Runcie. Any further discussion?
Just wanted to schedule a board trip out to the new CTI center. By May 1st, construction should be well underway, and we want to just walk everyone through and just give an update, show what's going on. That'll be part of our conversation that day for the board meeting. This would be on Highway 59.
The snow's gone by then.
The snow's gone by then, yes.
I will call for the vote. And that is approved. Next action item is approval of our health insurance bids, insurance provider, and becoming self-funded. Dion with an 82 deck.
We just thought with the change,
Yeah, I
it'd be
did.
good to go through the process that we went through.
I'm going to make a motion first.
Oh, okay.
And we'll discuss it.
I'll make a motion.
I need a second.
Second?
Motion made by Bill Mosul and seconded by Sarah Brink. Now we can discuss it.
We just thought that going through the process with the full board would be good. Matt was in on the insurance committee meeting last week, I think. So just wanted to go through what we had gone through with our 2-year insurance bid process. And I'm going to go to the next one after that. So these are our current plans that we have in place, and we've got the 3,500 individual, the 5,000, and the 6,750. All the plans, as you can see, that are in network are 100% after deductible, and then out of network, some of the categories vary a little bit. So the next slide is some of the history of our percentage increase decreases. Just wanted to share this with everybody so you can kind of see where we've been. Obviously back in 2008, 2009, that had a lot to do with switching. We were still on the gold plan back then, and we had some pretty big increases by staying with the gold plan, but then I believe it was 2011 that we switched to the Viva plans and the higher deductibles. 2020, 2021 was the last year that we were with the SWWC Cooperative Insurance Pool. We had then switched in 2021, 2022, and then this year to go straight to Blue Cross Blue Shield fully insured. That was still with Blue Cross Blue Shield fully insured, so they handled the claims payments, and then we would just pay them monthly. That RFP, they had given us an 8% decrease and then a cap of 7% the next year, which we got the 7% cap, but overall over the last 2 years it was a negative 1%, which was great for everybody, the district and the employees. So then we went through the RFP process, which we have to do every 2 years. We're going to skip that one. And we ended up receiving 7 bids initially, and then we do what's called a best and final, which then anybody can resubmit a bid. They don't know what everybody bid, but they can resubmit a lower bid or a revised bid. We received 5 of those. Our current fully insured through Blue Cross Blue Shield, the next one, came back at 19.8%. With a second year cap of 9.5%. That's not a negative, that's a 9.5% increase cap on the second year. Right away, and Kate and I had met several times with NIS, our insurance consultant, felt like that was way out, and hoping some of the other bids would come in better. The first slide will show you some of the bids, if you want to go just a little lower. Some of the bids that we basically threw out that were anywhere from 12.7 to 47.8%. So we didn't even go through those bids because we had, and if you go to the next slide, Emily, we had some other better bids come through. We had Medica Direct and SWWC, which uses Medica. Both of those came in at 5.5%. And then we had the option to go to Blue Cross Blue Shield self-insured, and I'll speak about that a little more, which basically to be able to be where we felt we could would be at 6%. Self-insured, we actually would control what the increase is upon the need of our claims. So looking at that, we narrowed it down to if we were to go to Medica, we would go through the service co-op pool. Obviously, if it's the same percentage with some of the benefits they offer. If you want to go to the next slide. So we compared the Blue Cross Blue Shield self-insured to the SWWC Medica. And go down just a little more to the bottom there. As you can see, it was pretty comparable. SWWC Medica, they did kind of a blended increase, so the 3,500 got an increase different than the 5,000 and the 6,750, where if we were to go self-insured and do the 6%, we would do it just across the board. They're looking more at, and we might dig into this deeper, but they're looking more at who or how many users or how many contracts we have, which on the right you can see how many contracts we have for each plan. So comparing the two, the single for the 3,500 was a $10.79 monthly increase. This is overall, and then family was $28.85. The 5,000 was basically a break even, and then the 6,750 going with Blue Cross Blue Shield self-insured was actually a decrease in the 6,750. So we had quite a few conversations with NIS and wanted to, and actually the 2 years previously we had talked about self-insured and going that route. There are some risks to it, and we'll talk about those. There also are some incentives to switching, and so we basically looked at that a little further, as you'll see. So the next slide shows a little breakdown of each group. If we were to go self-insured at 6%, just wanted to show the board the numbers on the right under support staff, custodial, confidential, and ASG is what they negotiated for increases for next year. The annual increase, the second column, would be the increase for that plan. The EA group is not shown because we're negotiating their contract this year. But if you look at support staff, all the single plans, they'd actually be showing a decrease in what they're spending because what they negotiated in. The family would show a slight increase, but you're looking at probably instead of a 6%, you're looking at a 1.5% to 3% increase technically. Even though we're increasing the premium at 6%, the district then takes on the rest of that. And then some of the other groups, again, are coming out well with what they had negotiated. But there again, it all goes back to what they negotiated in their contract. So if you want to go down 2 more slides. So one of the things we looked at too in this is how do we stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield? We've been with Blue Cross Blue Shield for a lot of years. It's been a good insurance to be with. Not saying Medica isn't, but just some of the things to point out. 1 out of 3 Americans are members of Blue Cross Blue Shield network. Blue Cross Blue Shield includes more than 98% of the hospitals and physicians in Minnesota, and they pay 98% of their paid in-network claims. So we kind of were going towards the side of how do we go stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Obviously, fully funded wasn't the answer, so then we looked at self-funding. If you want to go down 2 more slides. So some of the advantages of going self-funded, one of the biggest advantages of self-funded insurance is if we have a positive impact, we get to keep, or we are able to put those funds in our health insurance fund balance. Where if we are with, and this is no disrespect to like the insurance pool, if we have a good year, they keep the money, we have to get that money back. Then they look at our claims the next year to see what percentage we have. Another advantage of it is we control what we have for a percentage increase the next year, and we would use the help of NIS for that. And then also another advantage is if we have a few good years, we can actually start up our own self-funded wellness and incentive plan for the employees. Also listed at the bottom are items or different health and wellness solutions that we're able to keep at no cost. That our employees can use through Blue Cross Blue Shield. Disadvantages on the next slide. Obviously, the assumption of risks. So if we have a bad year, we collect the premiums and we pay out the claims. If we have a bad year, we could go in the negative, which then general fund would have to spend that. That's where we have to be wise on what percentage increase that we use. Unpredictable cash flow shouldn't be a problem, but budgeting it in each year, like I said, would be the biggest thing. And then the AMATA program, which is a weight and diabetes program, is not included in the self-insured. One question that came up during our insurance meeting was how do we fund, if we go this route, how do we fund the first few months and how do we get into this? So it's basically, we're on right now and we would continue to have, it's a 12/15 contract. So Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to pay from January 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2023's claims. Any claims that come after July 1st, we would be responsible for. But any claims that are in through June 30th, Blue Cross Blue Shield would be responsible for those through September 30th, so that's where the 15 comes in. We then would be responsible for claims after July 1st, but as you know, claims that come in July 1st, we won't be paying July 1st because it takes a while for those claims to come in. So we'll be able to take some of those premiums, put it in our fund balance, our health fund balance, to pay those claims when they become due. So I'll just kind of quickly go through this. What NIS helped us do, they put it in a model to show the comparison between the SWWC proposal to the self-insured proposal using a $125,000 stop loss. And I'm sure y'all probably know the $125,000 stop loss basically means if there's a claim, a high claim, that's over 125,000, we pay up to 125,000, and then we have insurance to cover the rest. We have insurance on our health insurance. So doing a comparison on the two models, they ran it 1,000 times. 75% of the time, the self-insured came out with a better result. And if you want to go to the next slide, it was around a little over $200,000 better if we go self-insured. And kind of what that means, like I had said before, if we end up the way the model ends up, that $200,000 goes into our health fund, not into the service co-op's pool. And we can use that then to help offset some of the increase that we might have the next year. Just some of the factors that they went through when they did the models was the 24 months of claims, so it wasn't just 12 months of claims, it was 24 months. The demographic information, pharmacy costs, plans, they put a whole bunch of things into it. This slide right here kind of gives you an idea of how things can play out. So in 21-22, when we use from March until February because the renewal comes up, we start looking at it in March. We actually had $121,000 to the good. That again went to Blue Cross Blue Shield because we were with them fully insured. The next year it was $240,000 in the hole. We do believe that that had a lot to do with the 8% decrease that was taken that one year. The model estimates is showing that we would come out about $229,000 to the good that would go into our health fund balance.
Well, for self-insured, who gets the administrative fees?
We still pay administrative fees to Blue Cross Blue Shield and NIS, but the Blue Cross Blue Shield, I believe, is less than what it would be at fully insured. So we, part of the evaluation criteria, we looked at the contract provisions, the provider network, the premium rates, the guaranteed. One more. Actually, you can go down to 2 if you want. And it was NIS along with, I'll kind of throw Kate and myself in because we had gone over these quite a few times, and the Marshall Public Schools Insurance Committee to go with the Blue Cross Blue Shield self-insured. Again, it's looking at the bid approximately $232,225 difference from the SWWC, which was the competitive bid. It would be using the $125,000 stop loss. We would suggest a 6% increase. And then the other thing that we would put into this too is we need to switch from the $3,500 deductible to the $3,750. That is due to indexing, and for us to be able to keep our fourth quarter carryover with our HSA, we would have to switch to the $3,750. That's just an IRS guideline. So that's kind of that in a nutshell, and then I won't go over too much. We did do a dental revision where the cost is actually staying the same to the employees, but we're changing the deductor, the annual out-of-pocket benefit is actually increasing from $1,000 to $1,500, and then the ortho is going from $1,500 to $2,500, but it actually doesn't raise the cost at all to anybody. Vision was not up this year, so we skipped that. Long-term disability and life insurance both came in where we would keep Madison Life. So we're looking for the insurance company recommended to stay with those two. So any question on the self-insured? I just want to say that so the health fund balance, that's all it can be used for. We can't use it for general fund or anything like that. The one thing we can do is if for some reason one year we had to take $20,000 out of general fund to help the fund balance because we're under, if the health insurance fund balance goes up, we can pay the general fund back.
I was just going to say, obviously, these are really concerning with the self-insured, just because it's a huge amount of risk. And I just want to point out to us as board members, there are proposals in this legislative session. Erin Murphy was just here a couple of weeks ago speaking on it, and there happened to be 2 teachers on the panel, not from Marshall, talking about just the unsustainability of what's going on in this health insurance. I think that's indicated by this. And they are talking about a private buy-in option to Minnesota Care being hopefully proposed. So it's just something to keep an eye on for us to pay attention to, I think, and then with advocacy and things of approaching these problems. So
And so this is a 1-year contract renewal, going self-insured. So if we feel next year, if we after 2 years, obviously after 2 years, we bid it out again. We're not in it for 5-10 years. So I will say many times, I said this during the insurance committee meeting, we went over these meetings more than probably NIS wanted to because of the risk and the anxiety of it. And NIS really pushed for this 4 years ago and then 2 years ago, that this was the route to go. They weren't wrong by what we've seen over the last 4 years. But we do feel that with the bids, the way they came in, and we keep hearing that Marshall Public Schools is a good customer when it comes to health insurance. So we feel like that'll continue, and this is a good route to go.
Very good.
Thank you, Deanne.
Thanks, Dion. I will call for the vote. It is approved. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.